here as well. I've been obsessed with the potential of AI since really GPT-3, probably at the start of the year. And so Kenny and myself, with some others, we're leading on AI across Essence Mediacom and Essence Mediacom Code. Funny fact, I'm a former Guinness World Record holder as well, as you can see in the picture there. But I am not an AI expert either. I don't have a data science or machine learning or neuro programming background. But hopefully what I can show is how actually with the change that's come, anyone can become an AI and benefit from AI almost immediately. Cool. So hopefully what you'll get from today is you'll hopefully see the excitement of what you can possibly do with AI, and a bit of confidence, if you're not, to start using it straight away and take it back to your businesses and start to implement it within your teams and your departments. And in terms of a run through of what we're going to cover, we're going to quickly tell you a bit about the story and the background of AI. We're going to spend a big chunk seeing it in action, actually. I think the best thing is just to see what you can do with AI. And I think that's when it gets really exciting, all the different types of stuff. Then for those who are using it, we're going to go through some tips that for you to get better results from the things that you're trying to do with AI. And then we're going to wrap up with some practical tips about how you can start your AI culture at the business or the team that you're working with. And then some final thoughts on how you can just stay ahead and keep up with all the latest things that are going on.
Perfect. So a brief history of AI. AI is around, for those people that don't know, something around I think it's about 67 years old now. In reality, it started off at the Dartmouth conference in 1956 when the term artificial intelligence was kind of first surfaced. We had the first chatbot in 1964. IBM Deep Blue beats Kasparov at chess in 97. Siri 2011. IBM wins Jeopardy. Watson wins Jeopardy, 2011. OpenAI was formed in 2015. AlphaGo beats Master, Go Master even in 2016. And then in 2023, we've had a whole raft of AI developments, which is why it's massively on everyone's radar. From an AI perspective, it's evolved over time in reality, from basic task automation, so that's rule-driven activity, performing tasks, to complex data analysis, so that's machine learning, the type of activity we might see in automated marketing activities across things like Google and building algorithms. Iteration of AI has been generative AI. And in reality, this is where, for me personally, AI has gone from behind the big tech dark room door and has suddenly now been surfaced into the hands of us mere mortals to make our lives better and be more creative. In terms of ChatGPT, so it was, I think it was released to the public back in October, November. It is the fastest growing platform ever. It took 2 months to reach 100 million users, and we're now at 190 million users. Since kind of ChatGPT was launched, the AI news, or the amount of information that's been generated around AI, the amount of major news stories that are coming off the back of it, and the amount of change that's happening over the landscape is absolutely moving at light speed. It doesn't feel like a day goes by when there isn't a monumental story coming out of one of the big tech firms. In terms of generative AI tools, they generally sit in kind of 3 banks. So you've got generative text, which is things like Bard, ChatGPT, and more recently Claude. You've got generative image tools, so using words to generate images. We've got things like Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, DALL-E 2. And then more recently, and a kind of burgeoning evolution when it comes to generative technology, has been the whole raft of video, audio, and 3D creation tools. And it can be quite overwhelming because there literally is so many tools available that you can use. There are 2 types of people, I think, in the world. There are those people that absolutely love and embrace AI or generative AI. And then I think there is a group of people that don't necessarily see the value of it or are fearful of it. But the reality is that it's going to become the new way that we interact with our software. It's going to, in the same way as typing is the way that we interact with computers and publishing technologies, generative AI is going to be the way that we interact with software in the future. And I think different to typing, which is you could have a slow typer and a fast typer and the output would be the same. My hunch is with generative AI is that if you don't use generative AI, the output that you will do will not be as creative, it won't be as rich, and it'll take even longer. So why is AI a topic that everybody should be thinking about? Well, ultimately, it can create undeniable value for people's businesses. So first things first, if you are brilliant at what you do, AI can make you much more efficient and speed up that brilliant work. If you're brand new in a business or brand new to something, AI can improve your capability. So on day one, you could have an assistant starting the business and using a pre-coded prompt could execute a task at the level of somebody that's been there for 3 years. It can enhance creativity and generate ideas and takes into a whole new world of visualization and thinking that we haven't necessarily been able to do before without massive rooms of people to do brainstorming. And then finally, from an experience point of view, generative AI can transform the experiences that customers are having with you on a day-to-day basis. And ultimately, the wrapper around that is it fuels a high-performance culture for your business. Happier customers, better products, limitless people, and increased profits. But the reality is, because this is so new and ever-changing and a crazy landscape, is that there are lots of risks and considerations, whether that's regulation, copyright, bias, the fact that it occasionally hallucinates, or ethical issues that are coming out and being surfaced more and more. And I think, again, there isn't a day goes by when there isn't a development in each of these areas, whether it's things like recently regulation, the debate around whether the AI partners should self-regulate versus it should be legislated from government, whether it's copyright, we've got issues with things like court cases surrounding the IP, around songs, around images, around videos, etc. And I think this is just going to continue to evolve. But I think the one thing that is for certain is that there is a general consensus that AI, if deployed in the right way, can have a significant impact on the wealth and growth of countries. It's creating an existential crisis. What does AI mean for me? Is AI going to take my job? Ultimately, my opinion is that if it's leveraged in the right way, and rather than seeing it as artificial intelligence, but ultimately augmenting human intelligence, so AI plus human equals rockets. It's brilliant outcomes, brilliant results, and it can make a difference to everyone's lives. So I'll now hand over to Louis, who'll talk us through seeing some AI in action.
Cool, yeah. So there are literally hundreds and hundreds of different use cases. What we're going to do, we're going to step you through like 3 categories, really. We'll see kind of what we can do in terms of pictures and imagery and photography. We'll see what it can do in terms of new types of customer experiences, of ways of interaction. And then I'll pass over to Kenny, and Kenny's going to talk about actually like words and text, which is kind of the broadest category, and all the amazing things it can now do because it can kind of generate language for us. So we'll kick off some of the pictures. So the first thing to probably say is it's true to say it's had a very, very rocky start. I've got some of the examples from my earliest examples. So this is where we're getting quite excited. I was creating presentations, wanted some quirky images, but then which look at first glance look amazing, but when you look closely, there's a very well-known issues with things like hands and limbs. And this one here, I wanted a picture of someone working at an old desk, and you see it's got very, very confused about which way that person should be looking. We work with a tourism client, and actually I wanted to see if it could generate perhaps some images for them. And you can see some of the faces if you look closely, and some of the hands and limbs get a bit distorted. This one's my favorite one. I wanted a lovely family scene by a pool, and at first glance it looks okay, but then there's weird things going on with the foot there, and there's a bizarre baby head seemingly floating in the pool. So it's fair to say there's some comical AI fails to begin with, but it has improved, and we're talking literally in months. It's kind of gone from some of those to some of the things that you may have seen. So some of the National Geographic emulated photography is absolutely amazing. Some of these look just almost identical to kind of the real photography. And then similarly with some of the portraits that were coming through, again, emulating that National Geographic style. look absolutely unbelievable. And then they've carried on even further. So the sort of the image generations are now able to mimic camera types and lens types and different kind of lighting conditions like really well. And you get images that absolutely look undistinguishable now. So without a doubt, they've the quality threshold has massively increased. And what you've probably seen, it's actually sparked some amazing sort of comedy creativity. So I'm a Wes Anderson fan, if you're familiar with his films, and then there's been lots of different films, classic films kind of crossed with them. So this is the Star Wars in the style of Wes Anderson. If you don't know, Wes Anderson's responsible for Fantastic Mr. Fox, amongst many others. And they've done Harry Potter in the style of Wes Anderson again, which look really amazing. You've probably seen the Balenciaga ones, and they've been amazing as well. Some of the crossovers. This is Balenciaga mixed with Lord of the Rings, and then you've probably seen some of the other headline ones, which are amazing. And I think we've never seen Boris Johnson look so cool there. So some of the quality and the realism is absolutely astounding. So that's led to us saying, okay, so what are the possibilities now for some of the businesses that we work with, some of our clients and partners? And so just exploring things like product photography, actually, and can we create realistic room sets that might emulate kind of what the way that product photography is created? And actually, are there time savings to be had? And can we get better quality outputs for using AI to generate different types of sets? And then we've looked again, okay, what about for people now? People historically, there's been all sorts of problems, and we work with a cosmetic brand. Actually, can we use that to sort of generate potentially some of the assets that we need there as well? But can we have these less clinical? Can we have these be kind of more natural settings? And again, these are some of the qualities that we've had very recently out of the AI. And then what about a more of a social context? Actually, can we see people together interacting? And again, we can get really, really lifelike images now. And if you look closely, the hands look pretty perfect now. So for the most part, these things have been corrected. I think some of the more exciting stuff, though, this was a well-known high street sofa brand that we were working with, and we came up with a campaign idea for allowing customers to kind of visualize kind of some of their, their great imagination of kind of what their ideal sofa could be. So some great ones there. So again, just playing to perhaps a child's love of dinosaurs and creating a sofa in a dinosaur setting, or a child's love of Disney, and actually can have my ultimate Disney sofa. Which, as you can see, this campaign didn't go ahead because when we come back to the issue of copyright, you can see where some of the dangers might be, or some of the things to be aware of. But some brands have absolutely used that to their advantage. So Coke famously ran a campaign where they used their back catalogue of historic campaigns and adverts and allowed users to remix them and generate new ones. As did Heinz. Heinz realized actually that AIs are very familiar with their ketchup bottles. I mean, anyone would ask for ketchup, it would be mostly a Heinz bottle that was recreated. And so using that to allow their customers to play around. One of my favorite ones as well. So Beck's took this even further, and they used AI to generate everything right from the initial recipe, right through the product, through to the product design, and then right through to the ads that were made to promote it. So Beck's autonomous really pushed it to the limit. So you can see the pictures and photography has come a real long way there. In terms of experiences, what are we able to do now? And this is where new AI-powered chatbots are now at a totally new sort of level. And it almost does them a disservice to call them chatbots, because there's a bit of a hangover from the traditional or historic chatbots that we've had over the last few years, where these have been rule-based bots and have been rather limited. But it's also fair to say consumers' attitudes to chatbots are also changing recently. There's lots of stats to demonstrate that actually, if a bot can give a customer whatever it is they need, they're more than happy to work with a bot than to wait for a human. So let's have a look then. So what's changed when we think about things like chatbots and these types of conversational agents now, intelligent conversational agents? So this is probably the only technical bit of the whole presentation actually I'll go through, but it's important because actually it's changed how we can approach these now. So the starting thing is a business has got all its documents and content and data. So however that's stored in web pages, in files, in intranets, in databases. what we can now do, we can now use a new set of tools to consume that data, and using kind of things like OpenAI or some of the large language models and the AI models, we can use it to store that data in a new format, a vector format that the AI can understand. And then we can use new tools, and tools like BotPress are very, very popular at the moment as well, to then interrogate that data, and so they can create these types of experiences. So from a customer's point of view, a customer would log in to your website or whatever the digital touch point was, type in their query, their prompt. That would first query this new vector store where all our documents are contained. It would find all the relevant information, the best matches for your actual company documents and information. So it retrieves all that information, and then it then sends that information off to the large language model, so that when it produces its results back to the end user, they get a contextualized response that's using all the power of the large language model that's been trained on billions or trillions of pieces of content, but it's putting your information at the front of that. So it's really revolutionized actually the quality of the response that we can get back. So what does this mean then? Why is this interesting to anyone? Well, it means what we can now do with these types of tools, you can prototype AI-powered conversational agents in days, not months. These things before were very lengthy and very costly, but now we can get things up and running relatively quickly. We can fine tune that AI model on your business data. So whatever your information is that you want to surface, that is what the bot can respond with. And what we've now got is ways of interacting with customers totally differently. We can have really, really engaging, intelligent conversations where they can ask almost anything. So what could we do with all that actually? What's some of the potential of these? So for things like a hotel or a restaurant, makes it really easy to take bookings, interrogating our data, or take any questions, either about kind of the food or about the environment or about anything the customer is interested in. For a hair salon, perhaps actually we could create virtual style consultants, so you can actually speak to kind of the virtual consultant about what type of style might suit you. For a health food business, maybe you can create an online chef, so you can ask for certain types of recipes with certain types of food that you like, and it can give you lots of recommendations. Or a home furnishings business actually could create an inspiration advisor that could advise you on different types of things that you could do within your rooms and within your home. Or a greetings card company can create bespoke images and messages, so totally personalizing a card like you've never ever had before. Or an e-commerce business could just maybe ask queries or questions about orders. Perhaps a financial business could create a personal financial advisor, so you can interrogate that and it's got all the data, all the background, all the information from that organization that it can respond with. And then finally, things like educational institutions, they can create personalized learning assistants actually that can guide the students through a personalized learning journey. So lots and lots of different, now this is the tip of the iceberg. There's so many really cool and exciting things that you could do now. And then it gets us thinking, the debate we've been having, actually, where does this go? And what's really fascinating, the work that Google have been doing as well, looking at the future of search. Well, what about the future of websites in general, actually? If we've got this new form of interaction, this conversationally driven input or voice driven, then do we really need to have the traditional style of navigation? Do we need our content, our pages, to be built up in that pre-built layout and page metaphor? Actually, can or should content now and all our data be dynamically served based on the conversation and the context of the user? So really, do we get to a point where actually there's nothing preset, but we've got fully personalized and dynamic content and dynamic experiences? So it'd be interesting to see where this really does go in the future.
Perfect, thanks. And then now we'll get on to kind of the generative word technology. So I think the one thing when it comes to generating or using generative AI from a word perspective is that I think the marketing content generation element is really well covered, right? So blog posts, headlines, articles, translations, YouTube scripts. But actually, there's a lot more than that it can do. AI has a role across the whole business, not just in marketing, from leadership to just about every function, from HR to research and development. Some practical examples from a leadership perspective is ultimately you could use generative AI as an expert business consultant to help you to identify business strategy ideas and create objectives and coach the teams through that process. It can assist the finance team with fraud detection, analysing vast quantities of transactional data and identifying transactions that are erroneous or stand out. Other areas that it can support the business, so it can create a SWOT analysis. I've got a little bit of a story here actually, where I've asked it to invent a grocery retailer based on the behaviours of the UK grocery retailers. So every bit of information you see now isn't about a specific grocer, but brings the kind of use case to life. So first things first, we could use generative AI to create a SWOT analysis. So highlighting strengths and weaknesses and specific insights. What we can then do is use generative AI to create a PESTEL analysis around this sector in the UK. You can get it to format it in a table and it can create different columns. So what is the factor? Give me some examples and bring to life some trends. So political factor, government regulation, and the trend is an increasing focus on sustainability. What we can then do is start to use it even further. So actually we want to start to identify opportunities for growth. So we can use something that, as a practical example, it can deploy something like the Ansoff growth model, recommending 5 potential growth opportunities. Again, tailoring that to exactly how you want to see it. What we can then start to do is get it to think as a kind of marketing or a UX expert and provide a breakdown of the 5 key customer personas for our fictional retailer in the UK market, pulling together like demographics, product needs. So for the purposes of this, I'm going to zero in and start thinking about, right, health conscious persona is an opportunity for us. So based on that, I'm going to think, I've come up with a name, which is Fit to Train, which is essentially a kind of healthy food range, which has been developed for people who are fitness enthusiasts. It's not about reducing your calories. It's about providing you with the right calories that you need to train. So first things first, I want it to generate me some 5 unique ideas. So I ask it to generate 5 ideas. It then gets off and creates really rich ideas that you can then use to take forward into your campaign. Next, you can then use it to create campaign ideas. So thinking about the customer consideration for the target audience, and then encourage it to generate 5 marketing campaign ideas to attract those audiences. Next, I then want to carry that through. So we're going to do a multi-step campaign here. So first things first, I've used it to generate a fictional product overview for a product called Fit to Train that didn't exist 5 minutes ago. So it's created me a really detailed, rich product overview. So I've got that. I then now want to use that to generate some themes and ad copy ideas for a paid social campaign. So I've got a banner that everything can go under. So ask it to create me a range of themes that can be used for the social campaign. I want the name, ad copy, and the rationale in the table. The rationale is really important. Louis will touch on it later to know why it's done what it's done. I then want it to build on that preferred theme. So within this kind of multi-sequence of prompts, I now really like the idea of back to fitness. I want to drill into it, generate me a table with 10 headlines, 10 sub-headlines, and 10 primary copy. And then on top of that, I also want you to create for me 5 A/B test ideas. So I want to make sure that we're continually improving and iterating. And the generative AI does that really quickly. I've done this with some quite basic prompts and obviously a fictitious context, but you can imagine how powerful it would be if you had rich context, rich customer information going into the system. So then one of the more recent developments from a kind of ChatGPT perspective has been the launch for ChatGPT Plus users of a kind of plugin which is called Code Interpreter. And what it enables you to do is to put in any information into ChatGPT 4, and then it can create code, it can run Python, and it can do any kind of whole host of really rich data science-based tasks at the click of a button, operated by someone who's got very limited experience in that area. So for the purposes of this, I asked it to analyze some data, look for patterns, create some segments, and generate comms. So first things first, I've asked it for my fictitious grocer to generate 1,000 rows of fake customer data, and I want it to be all around grocery purchase information so I can spot trends from a new range of healthy meals. Really helpful, actually. It highlights the types of things that you would want to analyze. It's then generated 1,000 rows of synthetic data, each one with the customer ID. I've then asked it to analyze this data for me and identify the target customers for our fictitious product Fit to Train. What it's then done independently is come back and said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create you a healthy eating index Based on this healthy eating index, I'll then analyze your customer base and find the appropriate customers. What it then does is it creates visualization so I can understand the spread across my customer base, does that by age group, by cohort, and then afterwards, it even goes and kindly spits out an opportunity table. So these are people within my customer base that is identified as being appropriate for the product. What you can then do is go even further with it, which is to get it to create me a segmentation, thinking we want to start communicating with these people. So it'll create a segmentation and create 2 distinct segments. For the purpose of this, it's kept it simple, which is those that are above the mean, and those that are below the mean. And essentially what it's then said is, if you wanted to generate an email, if they're above average, I suggest you focus on food, fitness, and like the very purest benefits of the proposition. However, if they're below the mean, what I would actually start to do is focus on things like cuisine and convenience. And it's generated 2 completely tailored emails for that. But it would have also outputted another 10 emails or another 10 segments if we'd have wanted. But I think it just gets across the sheer power of this when it's used in an iterative way to go from nothing to something quite powerful in a very short space of time with very limited competence or capability in some of the tasks that you're doing.
And that whole process that you showed there, Kenny, probably took it minutes to generate. Whereas when we think how long would have been invested in data scientists analyzing the data and then building that out. So
absolutely.
It's the pace there is absolutely incredible.
So how, Louis, do you get better results with Gen AI?
Cool. Right. Well, the old adage still stands, actually. AI, if you put rubbish in, you will get rubbish out. And so it's all about making sure we're putting in the right input. So in fact, Kenny, do you talk us through the first prompt, and I'll do the second set, actually. Yeah.
By all means. So when you're interacting with generative AI, the first part of the process is make sure you give it a detailed instruction. So first thing is the role I want you to play, marketing expert. The instruction is your answers will be factual and unique. The context is this is the product, or this is some information I want you to have, because it has no prior. It's the cleverest thing on earth, but has no memory and no knowledge of some of the things that you want. Give it some you can give it some examples. So I want you to output a table that looks exactly like this. And then also you can give it things like definition. So you can actually say, using the key principles from thinking fast and slow, provide an outline for an employee training program. You can then get it to give you a very specific output. So style, write in a concise form with a professional tone. Output, generate in a table format. You can be specific. I want 200 words, 1,000 words, 3 paragraphs, French language. You can ask it to provide you with a rationale. I personally think this is a brilliant approach, because it's quite important sometimes to double check and sense check the logic that it's gone through to come out with what its recommendation is. And then creativity. This is essentially the ability for you to say, I want you to be very formal, very precise in terms of what you come out with, or you can set the creativity as very high, in which case it'll use flourishing language, wild ideas, and things that are a bit less mainstream. This is just a practical example of what that looks like in practice. So as you can see here, here's the role, marketing copyright expert, the input question, write an outline for a blog, the instruction, include little known facts. An example includes sections on diet tips, exercising, the style, informal, and it must be at least 1,000 words, the specific output. So if you get every prompt to look like this, the outcome will generally be much closer to what you're thinking. Finally, then, from a prompt tips point of view, these are just some extra things that you can get it to do if you want to refine or improve the response. So provide feedback. Just literally don't take its first answer. Just say, look, that's great, but actually, can you do a little bit more of this? You can ask it to give you 5 more examples. When you ask it for more examples, the great thing is they're slightly less mainstream and more nuanced. Is it correct? Challenge it back, right? Feel free. If you're slightly inconfident, if you're not confident about the answer, ask it the question and it will sense check itself. And generally it is pretty honest. And then finally, just ask it to regenerate the response. No response is ever the same. One other final tip is use dictation when you're using generative AI. It can save you a massive amount of time. So it lives in Word, and you can just see it in the top right-hand corner. You can click on dictate, or in your phone, on an iPhone, it's just in the bottom right, and you can use that with the ChatGPT app, and it's super fast to create a prompt, and it'll save you loads of time. Over to Louis.
Cool. Yeah. So if you think of the typical way that Kenny's just shown there, with with some great tips and decorating your prompts, you can go from a really good input to generate a pretty good output. But what you're really reliant on still, though, is that predictive capability of the large language model to get you the best output. And as it stands, it really is just a huge predictive engine. But what people have really been pushing very recently, though, is actually how can we get the LLMs to behave more like humans and be and emulate some of those kinds of attributes and ways of thinking. So I'll show you a few. There's one known as Reflexion, so it is pretty straightforward. From your input, you get an output, but then you can ask the AI to generate some assessment criteria on the thing that it's generated. Then you can ask it to self-critique its output, and then finally you can ask it to act on that self-critique and then refine and regenerate the response, and that will then get you a naturally better output. Another one is known as chain of thought prompting. So the AIs are well known to perform better when they're doing some thinking as they go along. As are humans, if we break a task down into steps, spend a little bit of time thinking on that, on the output of that step, and then have that inform the input to the next step, we will naturally get to a better output. And then people have taken that further, the chain of thought self-consistency. Well, for things that are really important, if you're trying to get it to do some really, really important decision making, actually, what if we ran that process 100 times and then we see which got the most common output, and that would become our winning vote. And then the final one, which is really just like playing a game of chess, is called the tree of thoughts prompting. We can get the AI to branch off and try different approaches, and at each step it can assess whether the step it's currently at is going to yield the results that we want, and then it can finally kind of work its way through to an output. And my last point just to say is the outputs that we've got are usually they're kind of bound within the software that we're using, but they can use other tools, particularly the two most common are like Zapier, or if you've got Office 365 accounts, you can use Power Automate, and you can integrate with other tools, so you can get the AI outputs to power other types of tools as well. Kenny and I have experimented having AI respond to all our emails as one example, which wasn't a good idea. That we wouldn't suggest.
Perfect. All right, so there's a whole host of information about the background, how to prompt great in some use cases. But I think in reality, want some practical tips now about how can you make AI become a cultural norm. So the first thing, I suppose, the reality is right now is this completely uncoordinated path to adoption, right? And it's being led by the evangelists within the business. So a couple of individuals, there's maybe a couple of teams, a department might be into it, and a couple of aspects of the business might be thinking about using AI. But in reality, if AI is going to become a cultural norm, it has to be something that is ultimately evangelized and driven from the top of the business, and also is culturally embedded and accessed and released at the bottom of the business as well. So in terms of from a top-down perspective, what can a business do to strategically adopt and implement AI across the business? So for me, AI strategy is the new digital strategy. 10 years ago, we had to pull digital out of the whirlwind so that it became a focus within a business, giving it disproportionate investment, disproportionate focus. We've got to do the same with AI as we move forward. Along with that, an AI steering team, representation from across the business of people whose responsibility and accountability is to ensure that all the benefits of AI are leveraged, but also all of the things around ethics are adhered to. New roles within the business. So the businesses need to start thinking about how can we embed AI skills in our business? And some of that is going to take time to develop. So how might we develop those skills quicker in a few people that can become more experts? And finally, what technology do we need? Whether it's chatbots or tools to manage prompts to enable our people to be limitless. Over to Louis. Here's 3 things you can personally get started today.
Yeah, so it's amazing if you can influence the strategic direction of the business. Then absolutely, those things Kenny said are musts. But actually, what can anybody do in their role? And there's 3 simple things. You can start your own community of practice within your business, generate some interest, and get a group to start developing it. You can run hackathons to just kind of spread the awareness of it. And then finally, really, really important one, actually, start to create a shared knowledge base, because what we've absolutely observed is that there's pockets of knowledge and this best practice around prompts, and at the moment the prompt is where all the value is. So what we want to do is bubble up and share all that knowledge that we're creating. So some practical tips then to start your community. So find yourself some engaged people. Who are those evangelists? And we want some champions that are going to represent their discipline or their department or their function. You do want representatives from a variety of different departments in the business. So we're starting to kind of spread that awareness across the whole business. And you do want to get some management buy-in as well. Some people that are also interested in senior leadership roles that are also going to be part of that. And then we can do things like whether we have regular meetups or bring in external speakers, want to start to share this combined knowledge that we've got. And then the best thing is really just to start using it. So find some pilot projects or some pilot use cases and get this team working on those together, testing and learning, seeing what works, and then finally just sharing those successes. So whatever your company comms are, whether it's emails or it's town halls, showcase and demo the things that you're doing and get these stories out, because that is what's going to generate the interest, and we're going to start to get the rest of the organization starting to want to pull to be involved instead of you feeling you need to push and impose AI on everyone. In terms of like your hackathons, just some practical tips really. So we've ran a variety. Sometimes they're great to get a cross spread of different disciplines, but sometimes they're being more discipline focused actually means that we can be more tailored in the exercises. They work really well as say a 3-hour workshop. You can invite any size of group you want, but for the briefs that we'll have, break into little teams of 5 to work on those collaboratively. Start in the way that we did, with a bit of excitement, some stimulation, show the possibilities, what it can do, and then take the team through some practical prompting tips and guides and provide them for the exercise, provide them some guides or cheat sheets that they can use. Then set a brief, and then what we want to do is then limit this. So the team have only got 90 minutes to run through an end-to-end process. So it forces collaboration, it forces the pace, and get them to work on things collaboratively, and include some image generation of that, because you can usually get some fun responses. And then at the end, share and reflect and capture those learnings to be the starts of the prompt library you're going to build, which then leads on to the final thing that is often overlooked, but it's probably one of the most valuable things. You want to capture this value, and the value in the business is actually the capabilities that you're creating in the prompts that the teams are devising. So whatever the function is, whatever the discipline, we want to be able to use tools like Airtable, which are free, are great, or if you have internal intranets, whatever they are, we want to be able to capture these, and so we can share them across the business, and they can be easily accessed and iterated and adapted and continue to grow that library. Cool. So should we just wrap up then? The very final thing we've got to say is there's so much to keep on top of, and so to do that. There's some great learning resources out there. So there's a course from Google, the Cloud Skill Burst. So we'd suggest having a look at that. OpenAI have partnered with Deep Learning, and they've provided a prompt engineering course there.
That's the best one, by the way. It's about an hour. I think it's about an hour and a half, 2 hours long, and you get everything that you need to know.
Yeah, and if you've got a lot of time, Learn Prompting is incredibly in depth, tell you everything you need to know about AIs and kind of prompting there. But the best tip is just to use it every day, to start experimenting. So be it in your work around, just capturing, as Kenny said, things like dictation, just have it analyze your meeting notes, just doing any writing, give you suggestions and feedback on whatever it is that you're going to create.
Test everything, test literally everything, post spreadsheets in it, ask it to try things that you never even imagined it would be able to do. Just relentless, constantly interacting with it on it. And always say thank you and please, by the way. I feel like it definitely gives you better responses when you're kind.
Yeah, but then personally, you can have it to create some recipe suggestions for you, or if you want to try writing some poems, lots of people have published their own short stories that they've wrote with it, or it can even give you things like health advice and exercise plans and tips, loads of personal things as well. And then the very final thing is that it is a minefield. There's so many blogs, vlogs, podcasts, newsletters, so many things, so many people talking about it. If you want to just follow one to keep it simple, my my top recommendation is Matt Wolf. He's an amazing YouTuber. He posts a few videos a week, doesn't bombard you, but then at the end of the week, he has a newsletter where it's a TLDR and it captures all the highlights of the week. And then what he also does is he curates and keeps up to date futuretools.io. So it basically has every AI platform that's ever been released that's captured on there with some commentary about it. So by following him on YouTube, sign up to his email and check out Future Tools. I think that is everything you would need to know. You don't need to be bombarded. That's it. Great. So we'll hand over now if there's any questions. Yeah. So we had a bit of a rocky start with the tech. So we're hoping that actually we're now back up and running.
Apologies if we had to race through to get it done in the time. Oh, here we go.
There we go. I'll just stop.
Look at that. It's like an infinite universe.
Right, we're back.
Kenny and Louis. That's a terrifying concept.
Right. So we'll have a look, see if there's been any questions. We've had about 10 questions pop up as we go through. So there's some there actually. Building vector database and fine-tuning models can be expensive for infrastructure and require high techie skills. Yeah, we will have time to experiment. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think these are brand new tools there. So we're not expecting, but for the most part, the majority of them are relatively no code, and things like LangChain, there are no code variations, things like FlowWise and other things. So they are slightly more, they've been more tailored to people without necessarily needing huge technical background. So definitely businesses need time to experiment and explore these things. Yeah.
Britta, I think it is. Yeah, we've got a question around hallucinating sometimes. Can we explain it briefly? Yeah. One of the challenges with any of the AI, generative AI tools is that when you ask it a question, sometimes it can just outright lie. It can make it, like you could ask it for 20 articles written by an individual and it will potentially make up all 20 of those articles. It's much more prevalent in the earlier versions of things like ChatGPT. In the later versions, ChatGPT 4, it'll generally tell you rather than necessarily making it up. So I think if in instances that you are looking for things like data, for exact links, for something specific, and you're going to be using that in the public domain, or for the work that you're doing, sometimes it is worth just sense checking it. It's just an issue that you can get past.
Yeah. And then something from Catherine Beer. So as website designer for DFE, I'm also interested in what you think it might mean for government websites long term if people are using chat tools instead of Google to find resources. So definitely. So I think you've seen sort of the benefit is you can train the models to know all your information and your content. So for a government organization or government department, then imagine everything is well documented within that. So actually having a more conversational way of interacting and asking questions for lots of your users, I'm assuming might be an easier way of kind of getting to the information that you need, and maybe an easier way of perhaps booking some of the services that are available as well. So I think it's absolutely in its infancy, but I think we'll start to see more of that, and it would be great to see the government experimenting, I think, with some of those, actually looking at potential new interfaces into the data. What other questions have you got, Kenny?
Oh, hang fire. Well, if we just try and answer the earlier one. So I think there was a question around, have you answered this?
Yes. Yeah.
And then we've got done that.
Cover the risks.
Vector databases can be expensive. Will we allow time to experiment with these in-house?
Yeah, covered that one actually. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite AI tool? What's your favorite, Louis?
Mine is probably Midjourney. So we talked about some of the image generation, only because I'm always blown away at just the types of things you saw, like with the sofa example, actually, just kind of some of the, like the really, really creative, imaginative things you can get it to do. I think it's just, constantly amazes me as what it can do.
Mine's ChatGPT. I think it's my first AI love, and I've been unable to fall out of love of it since. But I would advise, if you don't have one, it's worth paying $20 for a ChatGPT Plus subscription. Although Claude is coming up in position number 2, by the way. If you have a chance, check that out.
Cool. Let's see what else have we got. Talks about hallucinations. Coding, do we have access to code interpreter now, and could we use it on client data? Well, code interpreter is only available, it's a good question, only available for GPT-4 Pro plus customers, so it's a paid subscription. And there is something we can do. There's the concerns around using ChatGPT within an enterprise actually is the fact that the data may be submitted as part of the response, but may be used by OpenAI to train future models. So your business data may go into the future. So that is one of the potential risks. You can opt out. There is an opt-out form to do that, but at the moment, we are not running client data yet through that. So whilst we're getting really certain on kind of the legalities and the privacy and data concerns, it is a real concern.
I'd be really careful anyone putting identifiable company information or anything into ChatGPT or any other generative system without seeking the advice of the business and having a conversation first.
Yeah, Catherine, really good question on sustainability there. Now, one of the things that's not often talked about, and Kenny and I are probably the worst culprits. We're carried away on the roller coaster of the amazing things that it can do. But if we know how it works behind the scenes, so it needs a tremendous amount of processing power, and in fact, it works better on GPUs, which are actually traditionally graphical processing units. So it needs tremendous amounts of processing power to do the things that it does, and that is only set to grow. So there are questions over actually, the cost and the environmental impact of these massive data sets that are kind of running round the clock. And so I know a lot of the big manufacturers, NVIDIA, a huge manufacturer of the chipsets, they're looking at ways that are kind of more efficient, being very, very conscious of the environmental impact. And we're part of WPP Group, and there's WPP have an alliance with the NVIDIA as well, and looking at future partnerships on actually how we can build responsible apps together in the future.
Oh, Sean Callahan, that's a great question. How can you see it impacting the world of old school art directors, copywriters and photographers? And on the other side of the scale, young creatives at colleges and universities. What's your take on that, Louis?
Yeah, so
as a creative.
So our view, absolutely, I've given parts of this presentation to other people, other creatives who've absolutely hated it and are dismissive of what it can do. I think the reality is it is here to stay and it's just going to grow. So in the same way that the internet came along, or computers, desktop publishing came along and changed the way that traditional creatives and art directors worked, it's just another tool that's going to come up, that has come along, and will just change the way that we work again. I think the thing that we said is it augments the capabilities and the ideas that you've got. It doesn't replace you. So my advice is to absolutely get behind it and use it to help improve your output, help it give you ideas, help you push you in new directions, do new things, help extend your capabilities. Don't fear the tools, use them, because they are going to be absolutely going to become commonplace in all businesses. So the way I would see them, if I was a copywriter right now, which is the obvious use case, I'd be very, very excited. I wouldn't be scared. I'd be excited actually at the possibilities that I can do with tools like this that would make me increase my output and increase the quality of what I can do as well.
What I really like about it, either from a creative point of view or a words perspective or an ideas perspective, is sometimes an idea lives in your head and you never get a chance to bring it to life, to share with anyone or look at it or visualize it or pull it apart, simply because you don't have the time to be able to document it, bring it to life, whether that's in a picture format or in a word format. What I've found with using generative AI is I can have any idea, any wild idea I want, and be able to very quickly articulate that and share it with people, but without having the kind of burden of effort that goes into necessarily articulating that. So my vision for the future is we'll become much more ideas based, we'll be much more creative, there'll be much more new, interesting things that come as a result of it, rather than just carbon copying what's gone before it.
Yeah. Great. Well, I think we're out of time. But if there is any follow-up, then Kenny and myself, I think our details are available. We're happy to kind of continue the conversation. You can tell it really is, it's an interesting debate actually about the extent to which businesses may adopt some of these and how far they could push it. I think what we try to show today is just lots of different examples across the entire organization where you can use it and some of the things that could be possible. But really, as I say, it's absolutely in its infancy. The tools are developing all the time. There are new tools coming out constantly. So the best way is just to, as we say, follow some of those tips, get other people in your businesses excited, start those hackathons, start those communities, just get people experimenting with it, use it in your work sort of responsibly and sensibly, follow the guidelines of your organizations and make sure, and we've been, data and privacy aware as well, but really start to use it and see what you can do with it.
And from our point of view, watch this space. We're going to be putting on some exciting AI events from our campus in Manchester, and it'll be absolutely brilliant to see everybody at those two. More to follow on that soon. So thanks everybody for joining. Genuinely appreciate it. Sorry for the mental start. And you've got our details, and if you want to reach out to us, then you can do it any time. Keep the faith.
Cheers, everyone.